So good morning, everyone. Okay, afternoon. It's afternoon in Kenya. My name is Muchai Gateru from Navari Limited. Today we'll go through e-teams and Mpesa integration with the ERPNext, and then we'll have like a Q&A, and then we see how it goes. Thank you.
Muchai, you can start presenting. In case you're facing any issue, just let me know.
No problem. Let me share my screen. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, it's visible.
No problem. So I would assume most of the audience is probably from Kenya. I see a few members from our company. But so let me start by introducing what we are going to be talking about here in terms of integration. So we have Mpesa. Mpesa is like a mobile payment. So we are talking here payment. So if you want to receive payments from your customers for whatever you sell to them, whether it's on the point of sale, whether it's on the web shop, or generally receive payments. So this is one of the integrations we have with the ERPNext. For now, we have done it for Kenya. The other countries where Mpesa is in use, Tanzania, at least I know I have used it in Tanzania. I haven't confirmed the integration element there in Tanzania and so on, but the other countries as listed by Safaricom who are the major developers and the maintainers of Mpesa, or the owners of Mpesa. And then we have KRA teams. So for KRA teams, this is a software solution for integrating let me say mostly sales transactions from your ERP to what they are calling e-teams. So in terms of Mpesa, I have split it into three categories, or two major categories, what we call payments. For payments, we are talking receiving payments from customers into a merchant or the sale of the goods. And then I have split it into what we call disbursements, what we call business to customer. Basically, you're paying your customers. Your customers could be your suppliers, could be your employees, and so on. And then we'll go through an overview of each of the use cases. But in terms of payments, we have two types of customer to business payments. We have what we call Mpesa Online, also known as Mpesa Express. So this one, mostly we use it on the point of sale. So what happens is, and allow me to jump a bit, is you initiate like a payment request as the merchant on the point of sale. I'll come to the demos later. And then the customer receives a pop-up. The pop-up they receive looks something like this. So they'll be told this is the amount you're expected to pay. For now, we are using the sandbox for demonstration or testing purposes. So they'll enter their PIN because Safaricom or Mpesa provides you with a unique PIN. It's like a password, which you enter to confirm the payment that is being initiated by your merchant. So this is very real time because you can't really use it unless you are kind of there in front of the shop you're buying from, or if it's online, if you initiate the request for payment, it's real time. The second payment we have is what we call customer to business. Basically, this is like pooling payment. So we have what we call till numbers or pay bills. For most of the people who are from Kenya, they use M-Pesa probably on a daily basis. So that one doesn't need explanation. But generally, the idea is you pay to a particular till, or what we call pay bill number. Every merchant will display it on their shop, for example, or if it's a big business, they have several till numbers or pay bill numbers. So you pay to that. Then what we do is we fetch these payments into ERPNext, and then these payments can be used to reconcile against either sales invoice or what we call a post invoice, whether you're using on the point of sale. So those are the use cases. So we have a point of sale for Mpesa Express and C2B payments, and then we have payment reconciliations against sales invoices for C2B payments. Then we have what we call business to customer. So business to customer, you're paying whom will call your customers. So well, in the world of business, it's like bulk disbursements, for example. Even Safaricom on their API, they list it under disbursements. But some of the use cases for this is you can use it to pay your salary. So you generate your salary slips, and then you can have like a list of the employees you want to pay, and then you can disburse money to them. Basically, it's net pay you're sending to each phone number for each of the employees. And then you can have employee expenses and advance payments. If employees make expense claims in the system, you can use a B2C to kind of disperse the money to them. Similarly, employee loans, you can use a B2C to disburse the loan amount to them as they had applied. Then you can still use it to pay against suppliers for their purchase invoices, for example. We'll approach it. The reason I'll say we'll approach it is it's currently ongoing. We'll approach, for example, for supplier payments, the way we intend to approach it is you can have a list of unpaid purchase invoices. Then you submit these B2C disbursements against the purchase invoice, and then we create a payment entry in the background to reconcile against the purchase invoice. Or we can have users raise payment entries directly against our purchase invoice, and then we disburse against that particular payment entry and so on. Similarly for employee expenses and loan disbursements. So that's more or less on Mpesa and the use cases. The other Mpesa integrations, but for now we are more concerned with these three, or two if I may call them, payments and disbursements. And then we have the major thing, probably what is happening at the moment in terms of integrations with most ERPs is what we call KRA e-Teams. E-Teams is a system, it's really an ERP on the other side. So what KRA expects is if you have transactions like for sales, you're supposed to submit to them in real time to their system, which they are calling e-Teams. There are several integrations. For example, they have apps. You can do it on the web, for example, where you just enter your sale directly on a web browser. And then they have something they call VSCU. But for now, we are integrating with the option called OSCU, Online Sales Control Unit. For this, to integrate with this, you need to have your system either online full-time and ERPNext is web-based and it's online full-time. So we chose this option as the integration element for integrating with the teams. The use cases for this in terms of integrating with the ERPNext, and this is defined in a e-Teams document we call OSCU. It's a lengthy document. You have to spend some time on it, but basically they list all the elements you need to integrate on. I have just summarized them here. So we have what they call basic data management. Yeah, you pick taxation codes, item classifications, for example. Yeah, let me try this. I'll come to the demos later, but I want to show each scenario. I'm trying to. I'm trying to hide this. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, let me move it here so that we can see what's happening. Yeah, this is good enough. But the gist of it, when they are talking of this concept, basic data management, we are talking of all these elements, for example, taxation types. Basically, this is like VAT 16, zero rated and so on. So this information you fetch from e-Team system or carry. Then we are talking of packaging units, for example. We are talking of payment types, for example. These are the ones who are giving you. But the most important for me is besides transaction type, this is not very critical. Well, it's critical for the integration, but for me, one of the major elements you are fetching from them as far as this element of get basic data management is concerned, we are talking of taxation types and what they call item classifications. The item classifications, they give you these items. For example, for now, for the sandbox, they give around 1,000 or 2,000, I can't remember. But they give you these item classifications from their end, and the taxation type they are mapped to. For now, some of them are not mapped, but in thinking production, this would be critical. So when we talk of a phones, for example, this is what you are getting. Even though it's not listed there, you also get what we call imported items from them. We cannot fetch this for now. Then the other element is what we call so basically here you are fetching this information. Later on, I'll come to how you map this codes information to our information in ERPNext for integration later with them. Then we have what we call branch information management. Here we are talking of sending and verifying customer information, sending branch user information, and so on. So when we say customer information, for example, let me just open this. So let me use as an example. So some of the team actions is you can perform customer search. Basically, it's you're confirming that that customer based on their tax ID is registered on e-teams, for example. Or you can send your customer information if you need. So those are some of the endpoints they provide. So that is what we mean by branch information management. And then you can send your users to e-teams, for example. You can send your insurance information to them. So all of them are listed here. I'm trying to summarize, for example, each bit. Then we have what we call item management, and sending these converted items to them. I'm calling it converted items, and sending item composition. So for items sending, the way we have approached the problem in ERPNext is, let me just open an item here. So in your items that you have in ERPNext, because remember you already have ERPNext installed most of the time, so you'll have to come for each item, and then you need to map with the relevant information with the for carry. So you map to item classification, because the item classification they sent you earlier, this is what you send in your sales transactions, for example. When you pick an item classification, it autofills, so these are the information, taxation type, and so on and so on. And then you map all this information. I don't know if you have a question. I don't. Or the same, you map the items as expected to each of the corresponding item classification from carry. The other thing, even though we get there, what you need to map is sometimes you have what you call imported items. You need to map with their list of imported items, and then they'll send you all this information. I might have all this information. So the information you see as displaying here is that later on you need to register each item. And part of registering an item, I think this one is registered already. That's why we don't have a button to register. But so you have your items, you map them with item classification codes from carry, then you register the item to them so that later on they can use it when you send their invoices. So this is part of item management and sending a converted items. The other element is sending your what they call item composition. These are bill of materials. There are some conditions, for example, for you to send a bill of material, what they are calling an item composition is you need the items, for example, because a bill of material, we have the finished product, we have the raw materials. So you're basically sending the finished item, and then you're sending them the raw materials. Each of these has to be registered before you can submit this bill of material. For example, this one is already sent. If it is not sent already, we'll have a button for submitting here on the screen. For me, this is one of the most important, mapping these items with the item classifications from carry and so on. There's a few nitty-gritties when you're doing it. For example, when we pick this information and we pick taxation type, we auto create what we call item tax templates, because in our case, there's somewhere we are mapping those. So given an item tax template in ERPNext, we map with the corresponding taxation type from carry, for example. The other element is imported items. These I have discussed. So you get a list of imported items from e-teams, and then you can map with your items. Later on, when you're doing purchases, you can send your purchase with that information. You still have to send them back the converted imported item after you map with the information. The next process, which is very critical, is which I feel is probably like the central of this e-teams integration, is sales management integration. Basically, here we are talking of integration of sales invoices, and in our case, point of sale invoices. Because the point of sale in ERPNext is still an invoice. But those are the two scenarios as far as the ERPNext is concerned. I don't think we have any sample data here. We'll check. But the approach of this is once a sales invoice is immediately submitted, we send it to KRA or e-teams, for example. The other process is you pick purchase transaction management from e-teams. This we want to seek clarification. The approach is the person who is the seller on the other side will create a sales invoice. You are the person who is buying will have to fetch this information into your ERP and so on. And then you can send a purchase transaction confirmation once you receive it. So this one we are approaching via an endpoint we are calling e-teams purchase information, where you can fetch raised purchases from the other end. All this information we have fetched from them. And then later on in our case, we can create a purchase invoice, which is the standard purchase invoice in ERPNext, or a purchase receipt, depending on the user. I'm not very clear on this, but that's how we are approaching it once you get the purchases from them. Then we have stock management, and which probably will take me back a bit. But stock management, this we are talking, say when you sell the stock out, right? When you purchase the stock in and so on. And then they also require what you call a stock balance of each item at an instance. Because when you sell, if you add 5 pieces of, say, item A, and you sell 1 piece, then you will send them the stock transaction that has been sold, which is the 1 piece to each customer and so on, and a lot of other information. At the same time, you need to send them the new stock balance of that item. But to do that for us, so they are giving you a list of branches. For now, they are giving you a list of branches. So they have 00 as a code, and they give them the name. So what we are doing in our case is we are mapping each of these information we are getting from e-teams to our warehouses, because the ERPNext uses the warehouses for this. But now you will come to your warehouse and you will map to this, so that when we are sending them information, when you send 00, for example, we know it's in quarters. If we send 01, we know it's a branch. That's how they have designed it on their end. So you need to map your warehouses, because when you're sending stock, that is important and so on. I'm not sure I have left out anything. There are a few setups, for example, when we are doing this, the environment identifier, don't worry about that. But we have something we are calling e-team settings. So the e-team settings in our design is we'll have either production here or sandbox, for example. And then they give you like the server URL on their end, whether it's a production or a sandbox. Then you pick the company. The design is that you can have a multi-company setup in ERPNext. So you need to set up these settings for each of the company, and each will have a unique PIN number. For now, the default branch ID is 00, which is required for most of these transactions. And then they require a serial number. This one they give us for testing at one point. So when you register these settings on the onset, they give you a communication key, which you can be sending with the other information and so on. There are a few informations here. For example, when we say get codes, we are basically getting all those transaction codes, item classification codes, and so on. You get notices from them, which we store somewhere in a custom doc type. I'll come to that. We have a functionality to ping the server. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's offline, and so on and so on. Then we have a few settings here, for example, for the way we thought of it, much as we are sending sales transactions on submit and so on, and stock transactions on submit and purchase information. We thought there might be a scenario where we might have a lot of data that you want to send. Maybe you don't want to offload your server. Maybe you can say send via RQ jobs in the background every hour, for example. But for now, we are sending on submit, because when they are testing, they require you to showcase that actually is happening. But we have given some kind of leeway if that is a scenario that a user might experience, for example. The other information is you can fetch these notices. So these come from them. For example, from a design point of view, every request we send to them, we initiate an integration request. It's like a standard thing for most integrations in ERPNext. So we create the request here, and then we can wait for the response, whether successful or failed, and so on and so on. And then we log every error. If there's an error, for example, most of the errors at the moment, we have what we call request data. So there's a date you pass for each of these. So most of the errors are those duplicate entries or session stopped, or there's a search request, for example. The other important element is what related to errors. Okay, the jobs that we are sending, even them we are listing here for troubleshooting and so on and so on. There's a listing of the routes, so probably for the technical. We list all of them here because they have been listed somewhere on their document. So in case they ever change, you can change the route here, for example, for each of the endpoints. But that's an overview of the eTeams integration. So probably what I do, I can demonstrate the Mpesa one, and then maybe we can say, but I think eTeams, I have covered a bunch of information for that. So this eTeams integration, the app is here as open source, for example. It's aligning with the open source because even ERPNext and all their products are open source, but the app is here and documented very well, for example. You can check it out later. It's mostly been built by a gentleman in our team called Mayakam. We design with him mostly during the day, and then we have reviews every day for the same. But let me go now to Mpesa so that I demonstrate that. I didn't spend much time on Mpesa. If most people who use ERPNext probably use Mpesa on ERPNext because it's been integrated for a while. But the first step in Mpesa is we have a few setups. If we have questions, they can come up now. Thank you. Sorry, I'm using the wrong slide. So I chat, let me see.
Currently, there are no questions, I think. But if anyone has any questions, they can just unmute themselves and ask the question. Let's keep this interactive as much as possible. So please do unmute yourself and ask the queries.
No problem. Before I go to Mpesa, let me put some caveats on this eTeams integration. So there's a process here besides the app. So KRA, they get you to undergo what we call a testing, automated test online. So you need to pass every test for each of the 20 endpoints they provide you with. I think it's somewhere here, I can't remember. Yeah. So you have to pass for each of these endpoints, you have to get like a success from them. And then later on, they schedule sessions with you where they expect you, they require you to test each of these endpoints with their team members. So we have had one session, I think we passed around 10 endpoints. And then some areas they told us to go revise. For example, when we were sending these users to them, we were assuming this would be happening periodically. But they want you to not use like a background. When you create a new user and you send to them, they expect you to send that immediately so that they can confirm. So we are hoping we have requested for another session with them. But the app itself, you need to be approved as an integrator before it's in use, for example. So that's the process. But the app is done as far as we are concerned. So to go to Mpesa. So I'm using two demos. One is for testing this Kenya compliance. The other one is a demo environment we normally use for Mpesa. So for Mpesa Express, you have to register based on your till numbers and so on. For now, we have just registered for what we call sandbox of testing. You have to have these credentials registered here. This is standard ERPNext. This was done like probably 3 or 4 years ago, for example. Then for C2B, you still have to register the information here. But now for C2B, there's an extra step because you have to come and register. Remember C2B, think of a business with multiple till numbers. Because the way C2B works is you kind of register URL. Basically, you are telling them every time there is a payment, they need to send that transaction to you to this till number and to this URL, for example. That's the gist of it. So you have to register all your C2B URLs here. A success means you succeeded. Sometimes it fails, but it's still part of the integration. So for some customers, you'll see they have like say I would say tens or many, yeah. So you can have as many as for your pay bill or till number, for example. For C2B, I'll come to Mpesa Express in a few, but for C2B, what happens is once you register, every time there's a payment to your till number or pay bill, they come here as what we call Mpesa payment registers. So because of data loss, they don't send you all the information. For example, the phone number they send it must like this. And then nowadays they only send a first name. So there's really no way of knowing exactly the customer, for example. And even if you knew there's a scenario that a customer can pay on behalf of another customer. So the step is assuming you want to reconcile this with payments is you have to come and match with the customer and then you submit the payment. This was done for post of sum generally if you use the 2 points of sale in the system. Then you submit the payment where we create the payment entry and so on. Or you could use this transaction on the point of sale. Basically, it's like if you use your supermarkets in Kenya normally have it, but they match, I think, using an amount. But for us, you search for this transaction, and then you match with your point of sale invoice during the point of sale. But let me just open the point of sale so that we demonstrate something, which takes me back to this. So there's a lot of backend information that happens when you register that till. We create a chart of account, we create a mode of payment and so on. So when you come to your system, you'll see several months of payments created automatically by ERPNext through that part of integration. So you'll see something like this. Let me just, so it will create all these Mpesa pay bill, C2B, Mpesa Express and so on. So when you're selling, for example, let me use the point of sale, for example. So this would be your point of sale. You can pick your customer. So the customers will have the phone number, but you can always change this later. Let me just pick an item, for example. When you're using Starbucks, they refund you money. When you pick this item and you say checkout, see if I want to use Mpesa Express. So you see the system will auto pick the phone number. So what you do is you request for payment. This is Mpesa Express or what we call Mpesa. So the person on the other hand will get this screenshot, which I'll get in a few minutes on my phone. I don't think I can display this, but this is what pops up on the customer side, or the phone number that has been sent the request to. Then they can enter their PIN to confirm the payment. Maybe I can do that 2412. And then we just wait. So if I don't confirm on my end, the payment will fail, for example. But if I enter my PIN, which confirms the payment, I can see the payment has been deducted on my end. There's like a wait period. I cannot remember. I think it was a few. But once the payment has been confirmed on this end, it will complete the payment and so on. We can give it a few minutes. It took too long for some reason. But don't worry, it works and it's in use by multiple customers. I'm not sure what's up with that one. But that's generally Mpesa Express. The other one, you fetch information, and this one is mostly on post of sum. I know Mania, who has been doing those tests, has done this on the standard post, and he has done that PR. So he'll have Frappe confirm that. Let me see if we did it for this. I'm not sure. A similar concept. If I pick Mpesa Express, I'll have to do a request. But when I pick C2B, there's a screen that pops here. Then I can pick that Mpesa payment that was paid. Because remember, here we can even sell on credit for C2B. I can sell in the morning, the customer pays in the evening. So later on, I can come and pick that particular payment. And then I reconcile against the sales invoice and so on. So that's it on Mpesa. For Kenya compliance, that one we have gone through it, but that's the gist of it. That's it for me. we can have questions. I think I'm on time today.
Yeah, I think people can just unmute themselves and ask questions, because this is kind of a very important feature that Muchai has actually worked upon. This is the M-Pesa integration. So it's very much widely used in Africa, of what I have been understood about. So I'm pretty sure that the audience which have come here today will also be using this extensively. So please do ask if you have some queries. If anyone has any questions around how the M-Pesa integration works with ERPNext, the e-invoicing.
Or invoicing, I suspect that's where there'll be a lot of questions,
Yes.
especially after it's approved. I think with M-Pesa, anyone using ERPNext probably uses it if they have that use case. But it seems probably there would be some questions.
Yeah, I could see in the audience, like many people are there, like Alvin, Benson, Daniel, Delphine, Dennis, Kitty.
Delphine is from our side, so
Yeah, yeah.
probably. Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah. No problem. If there are no questions, probably we can close on it. Thank you. It's good, but the recording can be done probably later.
Yeah, the recording is done. So in case if anyone wishes to, okay, Alvin has a question. What is the topic for next session? You can just visit our events page on Frappe. Just give me a minute. I'll just share the events page with you. So it accumulates all the events that we are going to have for this month. So you can have a look at it. So all the upcoming ones, we have one tomorrow also, we have one day after tomorrow. Tomorrow we have on automation of workflows, that is from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, we have got a question here by Victor. Does the e-invoicing integration allow printing of compliant receipt? Muchai.
So we didn't get that. We wanted to have the QR code, but the printing out is easy because the invoice, once it's submitted, there's information that we get from carrier and we update on the respective sales invoice. So yeah, the answer probably is yes. But there wasn't much information on that, but it can be done. We thought of a QR code and so on. I think we discussed that with Mike. I'm not sure how far we got. But I get the question because on the online, you can print the items invoice. But for now, you can print with the information that it is actually submitted, but it has a long key string from items.
Any other questions? So yeah, coming to the events, as I did not mention that, tomorrow we have one from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. that is for automation of workflows in ERPNext. Day after tomorrow, we have another integration, which is KSA compliance with one of our partners called Lavalo. They are going to show you about the Zatka integrations. So that is on 16th. And 15th, we have our weekly webinar. That is the ERPNext weekly webinar. So that will show the demo and the overview of ERPNext and Frappe HR. So you can just open our events page and it will show everything to you. Thank you, Muchai, for showing it on the screen.
Thank you.
Any other queries, please do let me know. Thank you everyone for joining. And after the session is over, there is going to be a link which is going to come up. There will be a pop-up which is going to come up, which is going to mention that to give your feedback. Please do share your valuable feedback with us so that we can improve these sessions and continue to do these sessions even in the coming months. So thank you everyone for joining in today. Thank you, Muchai, for being a wonderful host. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.